Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 290. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we have housekeeping. Which is that I will, for a few more episodes, be continually reminding people that you can find Cinema Rogues on their own feed.
Yes.
It is now its own show at cinemarogues.podbean.com, and it should also be in the episode description, unless you're listening on the uncut, in which case, you gotta figure it out yourself.
Good luck.
The uncut notes are written very late at night, right before I post them after running them through Audition.
If you're getting it through the uncut, then you have access to our Patreon. And couldn't we put a link just on the Patreon?
Yeah, I guess we could.
Yeah,
I assume most patrons are in our Discord, and there's links to it in the Discord.
Definitely.
But that is a bad assumption to make because I know for a fact it's not necessarily true. Because there are certain patrons I look for in the Discord, and they're not there, or if they are, they've changed their names.
Yeah,
so.
and then there's also some people who have joined our Discord but are not active in Discord, so may not have seen any of that.
Yeah. But yeah, they are their own show. Please do go listen to it.
Indeed.
And yeah. As far as my week. I got my new TV.
Yes.
And the only games I'm playing are for the show.
Right.
So I've been watching lots and lots of movies.
You've just been playing Street Fighter, the movie, the game?
Just been... I got Evil Dead 2 in 4K.
Nice.
And watched that, and still a great movie.
Oh, yeah.
I watched it with the commentary on, which was from the Laserdisc version. I noticed this a lot because I like movie commentaries. Yeah. And I was watching Evil Dead 2, and it was the Laserdisc commentary, and a lot of commentaries that you see these days are from their Laserdisc versions.
Presumably of movies that were around during Laserdiscs.
Yeah, I should hope that like Rise of the Skywalker doesn't have their Laserdisc commentary. Oh, we went back in time and republished this as a Laserdisc, and we're going to talk about the movie now instead of time travel.
You joke, but they're... if they're still releasing vinyls of music, somebody eventually is going to get nostalgic enough to make a Laserdisc.
I mean, a Blu-ray is basically a really nice Laserdisc anyway. Although I guess you could say that a CD is just a really nice... I feel like it's different because of the digital analog thing. Like, Laserdisc is digital.
Is it? I thought that was analog.
I mean, it's reading it with a digital laser. Lasers
That's
are digital.
Yeah.
Saturn, it's a laser, okay?
It's a future.
It's gotta be it's a laser beam that reads your movie. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Maybe my thought is just that it's SD instead of HD. But I guess DVD
This is our second episode
SD.
of the night, in case no one can tell.
What?
Evil Dead 2 still great. Watched with the commentary. Was pretty good. They basically just made fun of Bruce Campbell the whole time, who was in the room with them. He was in the commentary. And my daughter caught the final scenes of that movie.
Oh, no.
And she was like, I want to watch this. And I'm like, you can't watch this. It's too scary. And she's like, I'm not scared. Oh, man, they cut that thing's eyeball out. And I'm like, that's not scary. And she's like, no, this is funny. And it was...
Is it also a sequel to Gremlins now?
It was it was the scene where the lady zombie comes out of the basement and her head turns into the big snake monster and they fight it and like the eyeball shoots out and they cut the head off. She watched from there to the end of the movie.
Dang.
And then was like, I want to watch the whole thing. And I'm like, none of that scared you. And she's like, no, that was funny. And I was like, all right. No, you can't watch Evil Dead 2. It's too much for your 5-year-old brain. I let you watch the final couple scenes because I knew that the most scary stuff in the movie was not in that section. It was mostly just them killing big rubber monsters. And none of the blood was red. And so I was like, you can watch Army of Darkness. I'll allow that because it's got to be PG-13,
Is it?
It can't be R.
It might be.
There's no way that Army of Darkness is R-rated.
I can't say definitively.
It is so much wackier and less gory than I remember it.
It's ridiculous.
So we watched that, and she enjoyed that all right, except she was mad that there weren't monsters faster. And she watched it up until right about the scene where he gets the Necronomicon in the graveyard and all those skeletons come out of the graveyard. Spoilers for Army of Darkness. Came out in 1992. Get your life together and watch it already if you haven't. And she watched it up to that point and then was done. Not out of fear, out of boredom. She was bored.
Apparently it did get an R rating.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, let my kid watch it. So that shows
Good
you how good of
for
a parent
you.
I am. I remember. Well, in the beginning, she's watching it, and I'm telling her how they do the effects.
Right.
So, like, there's the scene where they push that guy in the well in Army of Darkness, and it's a fountain of blood shoots up out of it. And she's like, oh, and I go, they did that with a fire hose and a big 50-gallon drum of fake blood. And she was like, oh. And then, like, something else would happen. I'd be like, that's latex. That's a model. That's a Jell-O mold.
Nice.
Like, you know.
I wish I had you around when I was watching movies as a kid. Not necessarily because I was afraid of them, but because I found that fascinating.
Well, I didn't want her to get scared. And when I was a kid, if I saw like a scary movie, but then I saw like a video on TV later, like, you know, they do specials like how behind the scenes of the new Friday the 13th.
Right.
That would make it not scary to me.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to like, on the off chance that it did scare her, she wasn't. Right. But I was telling her. So then halfway through the movie, I kind of stopped doing it, and she starts telling me how they do stuff. And she's totally wrong.
Right. Yeah, she's just making it up as she goes along.
Yeah, she's like, for that one, they actually found a guy with 2 heads and filmed him and then ripped him apart into 2 people. And I'm like, that's not, all right, sure. That's what happened, I guess.
I like her version better.
I got Flash Gordon in 4K.
Nice.
The 4K press put out by Arrow Video. Watch that with commentary twice. Because there's 3 different commentary tracks. I still love that dumb movie. What a great dumb movie. It's Brian Blessed is amazing in it. Sam Jones is amazing in it.
I had the soundtrack to that on cassette, and my sister listened to it so often that I cannot stand any of those songs.
I struggle with whether or not I like Flash Gordon more or the first Star Wars movie more.
That's a weird choice.
Fun fact, George Lucas wanted to make Flash Gordon and did not get it, and then he went and made Star Wars because he couldn't make Flash Gordon.
I had the Flash Gordon soundtrack from a young age, and yet I still saw Flesh Gordon before I saw Flash Gordon.
I also watched Ghost in the Shell in 4K, and I got the Pat Labor box set, and I worked my way through the original OVA and started the movies on Pat Labor. I started Pat Labor because while watching the Ghost in the Shell commentary, they're like, "Oh, I think the guy's name is Ishimori, the guy that did Ghost in the Shell." They're like, "Oh, his first thing he worked for Gearhead and he did Pat Labor, and it's real good." And it's not. My problem was I went into Ghost in the Shell, which I still maintain is one of the greatest cyberpunk movies ever made. Probably one of the greatest movies ever made. I love Ghost in the Shell. The original movie is stellar. I mean, stellar.
It is excellent.
It's not even on my list of like good anime movies. It's just good movies.
Right.
And then I went to their older work from years before. And so I think I was going in with Ghost in the Shell on the brain, and I was like, this is dumb. It's just like some dumb 80s anime, because it is just dumb 80s anime.
Right.
But the movies are getting better. So I also hooked up my VCR to my new 4K UHD television.
Of course, naturally. That's what you do.
Watched Conan the Barbarian.
Of course.
On VHS.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, VHS looks pretty good on that 4K.
I don't believe you.
Obviously, I have some extended play tapes that look bad, but most of my tapes look okay. They look okay.
Almost all of our tapes are extended play because we very rarely bought them. We just taped them off of cable, and they barely held up on standard definition televisions.
Saturn, I know because I have a bunch of your tapes that were taped off of television.
No, you don't have a bunch. You have a small smattering of them. Most of them are still at my parents' house.
Anyway, that's all I've been doing is just watching movies and stuff.
Nice. I played through Peggle 2 on Game Pass.
How is that? Because I've not yet played it, and I keep meaning to. Is it bad? How do you mess up Peggle?
Well, the physics are wrong.
What?
The ball will constantly bounce the opposite direction of what I expect it to, which is not good for Peggle, first of all.
For anyone else, I would say that's how Peggle works, but you, I know, are a Peggle veteran, as am I, and know what to expect from Peggle's physics.
Yeah.
So
it just feels wrong compared to the first Peggle game. That's my problem there. Second, it's half the length of the first one.
Oh, no.
Because the first game was already a budget title. Like, I think it was $10 or $15 when it released. And it had 10 Peggle Masters with each had 10 levels to play. This one has 5 Peggle Masters with 10 levels.
I mean, really, Peggle Knights is the sequel we all wanted.
Right, and it's fine. This is not. And the people that it does have, one has Bjorn again, so it's just the same boring Bjorn, and then the other 4 all feel kind of samey and uninspired.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of levels where their abilities are interesting, but when you take their abilities and put them in a different level, it doesn't work very well.
My favorite is Radical Skateboarding Badger Man.
Yeah.
Or is he a hamster? I don't know. That guy. The multi-ball guy.
Yeah. So,
multi-ball!
Here's my biggest complaint is there actually are 2 other Peggle Masters. They're DLC.
Oh, no.
And one of them is that guy.
Why?
And
why do they hate us?
And when you first turn on the game, when you first turn it on, you just have the title screen there, and you hit start, and it goes to the main menu. In any video game you've ever played, what's the default option? Is it continue or maybe new game usually?
It's yeah.
What if it was open DLC store?
Oh, you died? Spend some money. Maybe you won't die next time, idiot.
Yeah. It's every time you start the game, as soon as you hit start, the first option there is DLC.
Oh, no.
They just EA'd all over that shit. It's depressing.
Hatefully designed. That's a hate design.
Yeah. And also on top of all of that, the animations are just really juvenile. Like, because in the first one it was always like kind of cutesy and goofy. Yeah. But in this one, like
looked like a bad Hanna-Barbera cartoon or something.
Right.
Like it wasn't awful, but it was like it was cutesy and it was kitschy and silly.
Yeah, in this one, it looks like a cheap Nickelodeon show, and the characters constantly animate while you're doing stuff, and the very first introduction you get to the game is Bjorn, the unicorn, and he constantly farts. And you just get to hear him fart, and there's a little rainbow cloud that comes out of his ass, and then he gets an embarrassed look for a second.
You're kind of selling it to me now.
And it happens constantly.
Kind of want this.
Like, while you're trying to aim, it's just like, here's 4 more farts. And then when you do fire off the ball and it does not what you expected it to do because the physics are broken, they give you like pity claps.
Great.
And it's just the most condescending shit in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not happy with it, but I did finish all 60 levels.
Free on Game Pass now.
Yeah, it is free on Game Pass. I'm glad I didn't pay for it. And then after that, I decided to go back to Ys. I just decided that I'm just going to play through the whole fucking series this year, because why not? Because most of them are short, so I can just play through. And that'll make me feel justified in having pre-ordered Ys 9, because I still haven't played Ys 8.
Saturn, you would have justified it either way.
I know, but still.
You'd have found a way.
I know, but this is making me feel better about it. So... So I'm playing Memories of Calcutta, which is one that I did not finish the first time, and I have gotten further than I did the last time, and I am enjoying it, and I feel like I will probably finish it this time. But I am getting to a point where I'm feeling like I'm kind of pushing myself. I feel like it's a little too much exploration in between story segments. Yeah. Where you're just roaming around doing the same thing over and over, and that's getting a little tiring. So I'm hoping that the pacing starts to pick up as I get further and it introduces more characters. Because I just got my third party member and I feel like it's starting to pick up because of that. So hopefully I can get past this lump and get into the game proper.
Right. I always never know how to pronounce Calcutta.
I think it's Calcutta.
I always say it as a weird mixture of the word celery and cold cuts.
Yeah, when I see it in my head, it's always been Celceta, and because like the name has been there since the earliest games. There've been Calcettan flowers that you could get in the early games, and so the name was always there. And of course, this is a remake of the TurboGrafx and Super Nintendo Ys 4, so the name has always been there, and now suddenly it's voiced, and I think they say Calcutta, but now that I'm sitting here, I don't remember it all.
You're not actually sure.
Nope, not at all.
Let's do some news.
Yes.
First up, Axiom Verge is getting a randomizer mode in its first update since it came out 6 years ago, I believe.
That sounds about right. It's been a few years. Cow. It was during the Wii U era when it came out, so yeah, it's been a few years.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, Metroidvania with a randomizer, like, how can you go wrong? So, cool.
Right.
Super Nintendo World opening canceled again. So, is this the third cancellation?
I believe this is the third cancellation, and again, it's because of COVID, unfortunately. So,
yeah, not shocking, but still.
When we're speaking about new modes added to Metroidvanias, actually, I forgot to mention that I did try the classic mode on Bloodstained, and it is excellent. It is the best dumb homage to NES Castlevania games ever. And if you love NES Castlevania games, and you either already have Bloodstained or have Game Pass, you absolutely have to play it.
I have Game Pass, and I like old Castlevania games.
You definitely should play it. It's great.
Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor servers shut down as of January 12th. So have fun doing any of the online stuff there. That game is not that old. It's 3 or 4 years old.
I have no idea.
It?
I didn't follow it at all.
I have no... I don't know. Scott Pilgrim cited by Limited Run Games as their biggest selling physical game so far at 25,000 copies sold in the first 3 hours.
Man.
So that's a big order.
I hope that somebody, whoever has been holding up the rights to prevent it from getting re-released, I hope they see that and realize that there was a demand this whole time and that they could have been making money.
I want it so bad, but I'm Ubisoft's on my shit list.
No, I understand.
I can't
with good reason.
Annual report shows games spending in the U.S. at an all-time high of, get ready for it, $56.9 billion.
Shit.
Woof.
How much of that was you?
Let's see, 1 billion. 2. It's crazy. And now, of course, that includes DLC and microtransactions, all games-related spending.
Yeah.
And I assume it includes mobile markets, which are
naturally
insane.
Oh, yeah.
Lilith Walter has been teasing a PS1 style Bloodborne demake on Twitter. They're working on an RPG. I believe it's called Witch. It's an indie RPG that's upcoming, and have started making Bloodborne in PS1 style, and it looks like a PS1 game. It's cool that it exists. Right. I'm not gonna play it, but it's neat. I love demakes.
It's weird. I have so much nostalgia for pixel art based stuff. I have no nostalgia at all for early polygonal work.
Same, really. Platinum Games promises Bayonetta 3 news and other news in 2021.
We'll see.
So, yeah.
I thought I remembered them saying that last year.
Yeah, Platinum Games seems to say a lot of things. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
But granted, their games are usually good. So, more power to them, but still.
Fan game Rockman EXE Phantom of the Network remake has been asked to halt the project by Capcom.
Yeah.
This is a remake of a Japan-only, I believe, mobile title, was Rockman EXE Phantom of the Network.
I believe so.
And they were remaking it. So obviously the hope is that Capcom's working on something, because Capcom doesn't send out a lot of C&Ds for fan games.
That's a little uncommon for Capcom. So hopefully that does mean they're doing something and not just that their lawyers are getting more aggressive than they used to be.
Yeah. Magic Castle, a game programmed on NetEurosi, which was a basic PS dev kit that Sony made available to hobbyists in the 90s, has been released after 20 years of being in weird, obscure development.
Nice.
So if you want to play a game from NetEurosi, then you can.
Everyone I know wanted a NetEurosi so bad back then.
Was it available in America?
Oh yeah, they sold it over here.
I don't know why I thought it was Japan only.
You had to custom order it.
Yeah,
but
I think it was $550. Was the price?
It was $750.
Oh man!
But not only could you make custom PS1 games, which we were all certain we would be able to do if we had one.
Yeah.
But also, it was a black PlayStation.
Yeah.
And that was enough that everyone I knew desperately wanted one.
Mobile ports of Sonic 1 and 2 have been decompiled.
This is really
which is notable because the Android mobile ports were done by Kristen Whitehead, and I believe Stealth is the other person's name.
That sounds right.
And they are not just ROMs. They are
No.
reprogrammed versions of the game.
And they're the best versions of those games, too.
Yeah, they're
because they have all
widely
these
considered
extra features that are not available anywhere else.
Yeah, the definitive versions, and a PC fan port based on this new decompiled code lets you basically zoom the entire level out and play it at like macro level.
So, as someone who purchased Castlevania Harmony of Despair, let me tell you
too.
that
It's not fun.
In theory, that sounds really neat, but in practice, it's really impractical.
It sounds really neat if you use a 60-inch television as a computer monitor at a desk.
Right. Yeah.
Then it would be awesome. But it's not from the couch.
No.
Opera is still around, apparently, and has acquired Yo-Yo Games for $10 million.
Yes, Opera, the web browser.
Yeah.
Now they opened up Opera Game Studios and have merged Yo-Yo into it.
Okay.
And for people who are not familiar with Yo-Yo Games, that's the company that makes Game Maker, I believe. So that is a fairly significant investment for Opera to have
Is
made.
Opera owned by Oracle, or are they
No.
just alphabetically near each other? So I assumed they were.
Simply alphabetically near one another.
Oh, okay. How is Opera still in? What do they
I have
make?
no
What?
idea.
How? Where's their money coming from?
This is all that sweet money they've made by selling out their search bar to Ask Jeeves for the last couple of decades.
God. Tingle designer Takaya Imamura has retired from Nintendo. He designed a bunch of other things at Nintendo, but all the headlines.
F-Zero, a lot of characters from Star Fox he designed. I read something that said that he had based Fox McCloud off of Shigeru Miyamoto.
I assume the comic book version of Fox McCloud was also based on Shigeru Miyamoto.
I would explain all the angry yelling.
Yeah, that'd explain all the screaming and striking people. Raspberry Pi Pico, a $4 microcontroller, has been released. It's available. You can go buy it.
Nice.
It's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with it.
I don't know either, but people are releasing little video game related projects. I can stick one in, so that's good enough for me. SNK versus Capcom Match of the Millennium on the Neo Geo Pocket Color has been rated by the ESRB for release on Switch, which is exciting. I have the other Neo Geo Pocket Color games they've released on Switch. They're very good versions. I highly recommend them, and they include a really cool 2-player version of the games. It's good. I'm excited.
You missed one there.
I'm sorry. Ocarina of Time beta version discovered, just like this news item that I almost missed was discovered.
And it actually has some of the stuff that was rumored for many years before the game came out. You can actually see it now. So it is an earlier development build. It's not super early, but it's early enough that you can see like the different medallions or whatever that you collect from the different temples all gave Link different abilities in that version of the game. So getting to now, not all of them were fully programmed in, so it's a little broken, but it's neat to see it.
Vicarious Visions, developer of the Crash Bandicoot and Tony Hawk remake collections, has been merged into Blizzard. And the headline I read explicitly said that now they will only work on Blizzard games, which would be why you merge a studio into another studio. Yes, you got that correct.
Since we started recording, actually, Jason Schreier put out a news article on Bloomberg about this. He says that he got to review Blizzard's internal postmortem documents on Warcraft 3 Reforged. And the team that made Warcraft 3 Reforged, which was also the team that made Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft 2, and StarCraft Remastered, has been dissolved.
Oh, no.
And they are either merged into other teams or went on to some other job within Activision. But all of these Blizzard vets, that team, which used to be called Team 1, is gone. And it has been replaced with this new team that is formerly Vicarious Visions, which is making a Diablo 2 remake.
All right, then.
Yeah.
I mean, Diablo 2 remakes was pretty obvious.
Right.
And I think that's been reported on before, rumored before, I should say. So, I mean, all right.
Yeah. So that's a thing, some shakeups over at Blizzard.
I don't really buy Activision products anymore, but I don't know that I could resist a Diablo 2 remake.
Right.
I actually don't think I could. Unless they Warcraft 3 Reforged it, in which case I could easily resist that. Limited Run Games are reprinting Sega CD and 32X copies of Night Trap and Ground Zero Texas.
Thanks, Limited Run Games.
In case you didn't have a CD burner, now you can buy a copy.
Yeah.
Microsoft increases the price of Xbox Live Gold, specifically Xbox Live Gold.
Yes.
$60 now buys 6 months instead of 12. So they've basically effectively doubled the price because they want you on Game Pass, not on just Gold. Get the Game Pass. So
yeah. That's pretty shitty for people that just want to play like 1 or 2 games online with their friends. They suddenly, and especially right after the Series X came out.
Yeah.
So if people bought one just to play multiplayer with their friends, that's a pretty shitty move there.
Yeah, I understand the move. I agree it's shitty.
Now, they did say that for people who already have a subscription, that as long as you just let it renew, it will continue to renew at the current price for the foreseeable future. And you will not be forced to pay the new price unless you cancel and then repurchase.
Yeah.
So it's something.
Capcom restructuring development of Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Yeah, so the team used to be that new company called M2 that is unrelated to the previous M2 because they spell out the word 2 as TWO.
Yeah.
They were handling it before, and now they have been shuffled away to possibly either secondary development status or possibly fired outright, and the main Resident Evil team has taken over due to some anger within Capcom.
Yeah, that's not great sounding.
Nope.
Capcom is one of those companies that I don't agree with a lot of their business practices anymore, but I'm still largely okay buying their products.
Right.
And I'm waiting for them to Konami themselves. I'm just like sitting here like, please don't. Please, Capcom, please don't. No, not Capcom.
Yeah, the Japanese developers that I'm really afraid are going to Konami themselves next are Capcom, Bandai Namco, and Sega. So I'm really hoping that none of them do that because I really like them still.
I really worry about Bandai Namco because I also buy a lot of regular Bandai toys. They make Digimon.
Right.
So I also like Bandai Namco games.
Yeah.
So I'm a little nervous about them.
Right.
But without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand. We are talking Hideo Kojima.
Speaking of Konamiing things.
This week, who you may know as the auteur game designer that brought us such wonders as Metal Gear Solid.
Yes, I've heard of that one.
We do have some listener feedback. First up is Rygar Starkong, who says, I have never played through a Hideo Kojima game. I just started playing Death Stranding on PS4, which is super bizarre so far. Before that, the only Kojima game I've played was the original Metal Gear on NES, which I've got to tell you is not one of my favorites.
It's also not a Kojima game, but we'll get to that.
Elknia Daffs says, there was a time when the name Kojima gave me a very specific feeling. The name had weight to it. It still does, but now it's a different kind of weight. I miss the feeling of not knowing who this mysterious Japanese man was. He still commands my respect, and even though I miss the idea of Kojima, I look forward to what he has in store for us in the future.
Yeah. He has gotten a little more out there lately.
Yeah, I think not in a bad way.
No.
Just in like a weird Lynchian way.
Good way to put it.
That way where you're like, I don't know if I'm down for what you're doing, but I'm excited that you're doing it. Tam1087 says, I'll be the first to admit Hideo needs an editor with a strong stomach and a stern voice, but he is one of the few game designers who seem to fully understand that he makes games. Yeah. We need less cinematic experiences in games and more Hideo Kojima grade weed passed around the office.
I don't know if I fully agree with that sentiment because I feel like some of the Kojima games I've played have had long cinematic experiences in them.
I think the point being made was more that, I don't know.
But no, I do agree that he does blend it a little better than some have.
Right. That's fair. It does feel more natural than a lot of other games that are like, oh, you're playing a game, now it's a story.
Yeah.
And they do feel related instead of like gameplay, then you're watching a movie, then gameplay, then you're watching a movie. It does all work.
Whereas in a Kojima game, Revolver Ocelot will straight up tell you to hit the square button.
As far as first encounters, I played Metal Gear on NES, which, as you said, not a Kojima game, but it's a Metal Gear game. So I was aware of Metal Gear. And then when the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo came out, I played that. And I was like, this is the weirdest shit I've ever played in my life. It's like a military game, but it's also very not like one and weird.
Yeah.
Which I believe the demo was just the tanker.
Yes.
Which is like a couple hours. And then I didn't play the full game. And then when Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, I jumped on board and I was like, this is fucked. And I loved it. And I just remember playing the whole game and being like, this is so fucking weird, but it's great. And then that's when I became aware of Hideo Kojima as a person and like, oh, he's like this auteur designer that's designed all these things. And then I started kind of exploring more of his catalog.
Yeah.
And I went back. I played the MSX Metal Gear games. I played Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, and then now have followed Metal Gear until its death.
Right.
With Metal Gear 5, Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, I can't remember if my first Kojima game was Snatcher or Metal Gear Solid, because it was around the same time that I played both.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both weird as shit. And they both had a level of charm to their writing, in addition to just being weird and Kojima.
Right.
They sounded natural. Both those games have what feels like a natural English voice, which was incredibly strange in video games at the time.
Yeah.
I was so used to stilted, awkward translations. Even in text-heavy games, there were those stilted, awkward moments where it was clear that this was not natively English. And Kojima's early games, and I don't know if it's entirely because of Kojima was a big Hollywood fan, or if it was also the work of the translation team at Konami at the time.
Right.
But there was something that made them feel a little more organic, and that got me interested. And then I played through the games and realized that the man was completely fucking insane.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's talk Kojima's early life. He was born August 24th, 1963 in Setagaya, Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Youngest of three. His father was a pharmacist, and he moved to Osaka when he was 4. Mm-hmm. As a child, his family began watching movies together every night. And not just watching them. They required the family to finish the movie before going to bed.
Weird.
So could you imagine every night your parents making you watch a movie?
That's weird.
And his parents were fans of westerns and action movies and stuff.
Yeah.
At 10, his parents would send him to the cinema by himself, but only if afterward he came home and discussed the movie he saw with them.
His parents happened to be Leonard Cohen and Gene Shalit.
Yeah, are you seeing why he loves film so much? This led to Kojima eventually making his own films with childhood friends. In an interview with The Guardian, in which he claims to have always been inventing stories from the world around him, and that his mind is so powerfully overactive that it is, quote, dangerous for him to drive, and that he has, quote, driven into the gate outside his house numerous times.
That is the most Kojima-sounding bullshit I've heard in a while.
He discusses a lot of these, his love for film and how he wanted to work on movies, but it didn't work out.
Right.
But I just love the interview because I'm like, he's got to be fucking with them,
right?
The whole time, and then like in the middle of it, the interviewer's like, because Kojima's going on about he's like, I'd make stories about literally everything around my person, and the guy goes, okay, what about this coffee mug? And Kojima goes, well, I don't have a story for that. But I'm imagining we're sitting in a giant coffee mug. That's what he says in the interview. And I'm like, Kojima, but that's not a story. That's you just
perfect.
While studying economics, he came to the conclusion to work with video games. Because he determined that the lack of adequate film schools in his area, along with the fact that Japanese film budgets were relatively small, meant that he probably would never be able to get to make the kinds of films he wanted to. So he in the way he tells it, wasn't so much that he settled on video games as much as he just chose to tell stories with the medium that was convenient to him.
Right.
He eventually settled on Konami as where he wanted to work because they were listed on the stock exchange, which legitimized his career choice a bit. And only his mother seemed to approve of his career choice in the first place.
Right. You hear that a lot in early Japanese game developers, that their parents did not at all approve of them going into game development.
Right. And he claims that very early on he was interested in the art of video games and what the medium could offer. So according to him, he came into video games with like this vision, of what kind of storytelling medium could these be.
And it was immediately apparent.
Yeah. And I will let you pick up all the rest of his life.
Everything else.
I covered him up to Konami. You can do the after Konami.
Oh, okay. This is the fast part. It immediately became apparent because he wanted to work on NES games or Famicom games. That was
right.
That was what he got there for. And so they immediately put him on the MSX team and told him, that's what you're making. You don't get to make Famicom games.
Right.
And so his first game was Penguin Adventure.
Well-known storytelling game, Penguin Adventure.
The sequel to Antarctic Adventure. Which is actually an arcade game that I enjoy. I do enjoy Antarctic Adventure.
Because of the story.
Because you get to play as a penguin, and I like penguins.
Because at the end you find out you're not a penguin, you're a guy in a tux inside of a coffee mug going to a banquet.
Yes.
Right? That...
Well, you have to... So first you have to talk about the Lolly Lulelo.
Right. How could I forget?
No, he... After working on Penguin Adventure, which was not a game that he made, he was just the assistant director on it once he started at Konami. And then he started working on a next game, which he called Lost World.
WARLD.
Correct. And it was later canceled due to hardware limitations. What he wanted to do with the game was not something an MSX could do.
Shocking. Right off the bat. He's like, let's do this. And they're like, you literally can't. And he's like, don't tell me. And they're like, no, literally we can't.
Yeah. That's pretty much how his first project as a director happened. And then one of the senior associates there on the MSX team had been working on something and couldn't make it work. He was just giving up. He was like, this project is a trash project. It's going to go in the trash pile. Kojima, take over. And it was Metal Gear. And Kojima looked at it because the other guy just couldn't figure out a way to make combat work in the game. And so Kojima looked at it and looked at what the story they had so far was and said, well, instead of making the combat work, make the game around trying to escape and not combat. Make it about trying to not have to encounter things and not being seen.
Make it about stealth action.
Right. And they didn't even really think that it was stealth yet. They just thought it was escape game, trying to run away. And that's how Metal Gear came about. And it was a commercial success in both Japan and Europe, where is the only countries it was released.
Well, to be fair, did the MSX even come to America at all?
I think it technically did, but I don't think either of the owners of an MSX in America were looking for games.
Right.
So, no, it did not release over here. No Konami games released on MSX in America. If the MSX did release, I think it did, but it just did really poorly.
I'm not convinced it did, but I really would have to check.
Yeah, I'd have to double check. I thought I had remembered that it was marketed here, but it's been a long time since I've looked into it.
Right.
Of course, the NES port Kojima was not all involved in. He is famously very critical of its changes, including the fact that Metal Gear doesn't appear in it.
And the MSX version is very different from the Famicom version.
It's a completely different game. There's nothing at all.
Like it's so like to even calling it a port is like now that you just took the name.
Yeah, it's just another game that happens to have that name.
Yeah.
And does not have Metal Gear in it. And after that, he went on to make Snatcher for the MSX2. And it was also on PC. We did a whole episode about it back, episode 235. He also did SD Snatcher, which was a JRPG remake of Snatcher, but with chibi graphics.
Yep. I know that we make fun of him, and I feel like he takes it well. He understands how he's seen, it seems like. So. But could you imagine your first game being Metal Gear and your second game being Snatcher? Like,
seriously.
Holy shit, like off to a start, man.
Right.
And Penguin Adventure straight into Metal Gear, straight into Snatcher.
Right. And this was when he was put in the team he didn't want to be on, working on hardware that was inferior to what he wanted to be working on.
Right.
And he was putting out this stuff.
Yeah.
So, got to say, he made the best of a situation he didn't necessarily want to be in. And while he was making Snatcher and SD Snatcher, the NES port of Metal Gear started selling really well in Western markets. Surprisingly well for how not great it is.
A lot of advertising for that game.
Oh, yeah. And so
famously in the Larry Hama G.I. Joe comics, I believe, they had lots of Metal Gear.
I believe that.
Advertising.
Well, Konami just advertised everywhere at that point.
True.
Just everything they could. And so Konami started working on an internal sequel to NES Metal Gear, which went on to be Snake's Revenge. It's also bad. Don't bother with it. And Kojima was told by one of his coworkers they were working on Snake's Revenge, and he was so incensed that there was a sequel to Metal Gear being made that he had nothing to do with, that he immediately got his team working on Metal Gear 2 for the MSX.
I'm sure that caused no conflicts within the company whatsoever.
Certainly not. Certainly everybody in Konami was very happy to hear that there was a second sequel to Metal Gear in production unrelated to the existing sequel.
That they're competing with themselves for the same game.
Fortunately, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake on MSX was incredibly well received in Japan.
Oh, yeah. And if you've not played it, is a stellar game.
Yeah, and I don't think Snake's Revenge released in Japan. So I think he got away with it just because he focused his game on the Japanese market.
Right.
And it's widely recognized as pioneering the stealth action genre. It introduced a lot of the aspects that were seen in the franchise forever to this day, including the little radar with the enemy view cones visible was introduced in this game. It was the first game to do something like that. Also, it started focusing on having the player minimize sound that they make and trying to distract the guards by like knocking on walls and shit. For a game on such primitive hardware and released so early, it really was ahead of its time as far as a lot of those features go. And of course, it never left Japan at all. It didn't get released in Europe like the first one did. It never left Japan until it was included as a bonus game on Metal Gear Solid 3.
That's how I played it on Subsistence.
Right. Yeah, that's the first time that I got a chance to really play it. I think there was a fan translation before that, but I was not about to try to set up an MSX2 emulator for one game.
It was so good that it distracted me from MGS3 for a long time, and then I was like, are all MSX games like this?
No.
And I went and I started emulating MSX games, and I was like, no, they're not.
No.
But I had the thought, so...
Yeah, try to play the MSX2 ports of Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and you'll quickly learn that most MSX games are trash.
Yeah.
They're really bad. So, after that, he wanted to follow up on what they had done with Snatcher. And so they started working on a game that was tentatively called Beyond in 1990. It took them 4 years to make the game, he and his little team in Konami. And they finally released, it was supposed to be released on the NEC PC 8801, and it finally released on the NEC PC 9821 under the name Police Knots.
Yeah, 1,000 PCs later.
Yeah, basically. And it would be ported to the 3DO Saturn and PlayStation, never released outside of Japan. And apparently most of what he did with Police Knots was already planned out during the creation of Snatcher. Like, it was based on notes and ideas and concepts he had then, but just the hardware limitations at the time couldn't make any of it happen. The only thing that was new was the story itself. And Kojima, being Kojima, wanted complete control over the presentation and storytelling, so he helped write a scripting engine that allowed him to just implement all the animation and music transitions on his own without asking anyone else from the programming team. So none of the programmers, once the engine was created, understood how any of it went together at this point. It was just Kojima on his own doing Kojima stuff. And he said that a major influence on the game's production was his belief that game developers weren't fully exploring the medium's ability to tell stories in the same way that film or television could. And so he wanted to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't say that in 1990 video games weren't matching movies and television.
Gasp. Yeah.
I do, because we're about to jump into Metal Gear Solid.
Right.
But it does kind of feel like, to this point, I can't imagine Konami knew what the hell to do with him.
Yeah.
They sure as hell didn't seem to know what to do with most of his projects, even though they were very well received.
Yeah. But they were all released on less than the most popular platforms at this point.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like they were sticking him somewhere because they're like, he's doing something. We don't... like, the game industry in 1990 doesn't even have the capacity to recognize this kind of work.
Right.
Honestly, like, I know in our Snatcher episode, we had our complaints with him, whatever, but like, putting yourselves in the industry in the late 80s, like it's not built to contain these kinds of works like that. It's nuts.
And of course, Kojima and his entire team were under NDAs about talking about anything in Konami the entire time they worked there, and probably still today. So it's really hard to find anything critical about his time working there. But based on interviews with him and other team members from that era, it really feels like Konami didn't really want to give him a platform. Like they saw this guy was doing the stuff that was well received and was critically doing very well, commercially doing very well, and they saw that it was interesting, but I think maybe they didn't know how to market it, or they didn't know how to best utilize it. So they were just like, put him on something that doesn't get a ton of attention and just let it build on its own.
This is also in an era where companies seemed to care less about the critical and artistic value of their game. They're like, did it sell? Cool, make another one. You know, I could really just see it being incompetence. Them being like, he's making this thing called Snatcher.
Hold on.
I know,
are you
incompetence at Konami.
Yeah.
I know. And by extension, Ultra Games, I can't believe for a moment.
Certainly not.
I can just see someone in like 1988 being like, he's making this thing where you're a cop, but it's not a shooting game, and you talk to a robot and you investigate crimes and then go to a bar. And they're like, well, what kind of gameplay is it? Well, sometimes you shoot stuff, but then
it's mostly visual novel.
Mostly you just talk to people. I just them being like, I don't release it outside of Japan for sure. I mean, who the hell is going to buy that? I mean, fuck.
Yeah. But then they did release it outside of Japan.
Oh yeah, Snatcher they did.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking Police Knots.
Yeah, it took them 6 years to do it, but
yeah, it was a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's jump into Metal Gear.
Yeah,
Solid.
Yeah. So and we did do an episode way back in episode 77 about
77
Metal Gear franchise, but that was so long ago that I have to imagine we'll come back to some of this again in the future.
Oh yeah, and even at the time we're like, we'll revisit Metal Gear, and then we didn't.
So anyway, 220 something episodes later.
But that is a good episode. Our good friend Corey was on it, who's the huge Metal Gear Solid fan. It's still good. Go listen to it.
It was a lot of fun, too. So they did start work on a polygonal sequel to Metal Gear 2, and they were going to make it for the 3DO.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how the 3DO turned out.
We do.
Apparently, Kojima was a fan of the 3DO. Between Police Knots and Metal Gear, he really wanted to focus on it.
As like the multimedia console, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, and as him very obviously wanting, like, I could see him gravitating toward that, I guess is what I'm saying, for sure.
Fortunately, after it was discontinued, executives at Konami told him, you're moving this to PlayStation. Which might have been because they didn't know what to make of the PlayStation yet at the time, with the N64 and Saturn on the horizon. Those were known quantities. So maybe he just got lucky that PlayStation happened to be such a big
deal. Yeah.
So they did decide to name the game Metal Gear Solid instead of Metal Gear 3 because one, Solid Snake, and two, Kojima thought the series wouldn't be well known in the West, which he was right.
Yeah.
So it made sense that he wanted to start over from a number one. The development team was... I read a lot about this part. The development team received education from the Huntington Beach, California SWAT team. So they went out to Konami USA, and they brought out a local SWAT team who showed them how vehicles, weapons, and explosives were used in live combat.
Oh man.
And in the sounds that they make, and how much smoke it would generate, and how distracting it would be on a battlefield. And
There is a lot of military tech fetishism in Kojima's work, even in stuff like Snatcher. Like when they give you your gun and they go on about it for like 10 minutes. Like, this is the whatever double action revolver such and such. This is the metal it's made out of.
Yeah.
And it's what's weird is in interviews and seeing him and stuff, he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. But he very much like is it again, this like military hardware fetishism is the only way I can describe it.
And maybe it wasn't even him. Maybe it was someone else on his team, because he apparently had a very tight team for quite a while there.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's become definitely a defining Kojima factor.
Yes.
Is this almost obsessive attention to, look, this guy's got another guy's arm attached to him and he's fucking a psychopath, but we're going to use a real gun, give it to him, and explain all the details of this gun and how he's personally modified it and in what ways to make it work the way he wants it to. And you're like, he's got another guy's arm glued to him and his spirit is taking him over. I don't need that detail, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does it throughout the series. It's a bizarre level of detail, and it's especially out of place sometimes, because it's often somebody describing in minute detail these weapons to someone who is a seasoned veteran soldier.
And randomly for no reason. Well, I do think, and that we're getting off topic as we're talking Kojima, but now we're talking Metal Gear.
Yeah.
I do think it grounds the series. That's what that's the only thing that keeps it from fucking flying off the face of the earth into outer space. Like, it's the only thing keeping it down here, where it's like, this crazy shit like, oh, that guy's a fucking vampire. And then Snake's like, well, what I did is I filed down the grip right here so that when I hold my knife, and you're like, what? That's a vampire. Like, you can't.
Like, some guys talking in extreme detail about exactly how to use this specific kind of combat knife to defend yourself if you happen to be prone in a jungle and behind them is a giant walking tank.
And then in the game, it's like, so how do I enact all of that? And they're like, well, press square.
Push the square button.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I derailed us.
No. I think in a Kojima kind of way, all that makes sense. Now, apparently he had wanted to have dynamic soundtracks in MGS1, and the way that we are used to them now, where based on what you were doing at that specific moment, the music would change, and the PlayStation just could not handle it at all. The amount of RAM and the way that it loaded music on the PlayStation sound card couldn't do it, and he was apparently very upset that Ocarina of Time came out with dynamic soundtrack and he couldn't have it.
Right.
The game was first revealed to the public at TGS in 1996 and was finally released in late 1998, over 2 years later. And it was just revealed in 96. They had started working on it a couple years before that.
Right.
But of course, it was universally praised. It's widely regarded as one of the best and most influential games of its era. Kojima had mentioned that he was surprised to be recognized in public by people following the success of MGS, not just in Japan, but also in California. People would see him on the street and know, hey, that's Metal Gear guy. And
he is definitely one of the more recognizable faces within the industry,
right?
For sure.
And MGS2 was rumored for many years in advance. And then they finally showed the game publicly in early 2001, the same year the game actually released, which that was different. It was immediately one of the most anticipated games of the year.
It was a big deal.
Oh, it was a huge deal. And while he was working on MGS2, he and his team also produced Zone of the Enders, which is a game that I feel like a lot of people forget today. But it was.
I was playing the Steam version of that the other day, and no, not even months ago. What is time?
The other year.
And it is fucked. It is fucking weird. It is some weird shit.
The gameplay is, man, it's like all right. It's an okay, fun game. But yeah, that story just is batshit nutso.
Holy crap.
Right?
And then it's like Kojima was like, I don't know, Evangelion wasn't weird enough. You think we could Do you think we can do it but weirder?
And then in the second Zone of Enders, suddenly Vic Viper is there from Gradius. Nobody explains why.
They're all friends, you know.
Yeah, they're
usual stuff.
Yeah, my friend Vic Viper. Anyway, but yeah, so when Zone of Enders came out, it came with a demo for Metal Gear Solid 2, which caused it to be one of the highest selling games on the PS2 immediately, because people could get that MGS2 demo.
Right.
And yeah, MGS2 did release later that year to pretty much universal acclaim. However, Kojima had introduced Raiden because he had heard that Snake wasn't appealing to female gamers.
But Raiden was?
Apparently. I think he was only talking to women who worked at Konami.
Okay.
I think that was his entire focus group.
All right.
And so but he thought it would be ridiculous to have tutorial missions where people explain the basic concepts to Snake again. So he wanted this Raiden character, and then eventually he just decided he would just have Raiden for the whole game. Yeah. But in the process, he wanted to keep it a surprise because Kojima. Not because he thought that it would like hurt the game's sales if he revealed Raiden. He thought that would help. He just wanted to be Kojima and hide it from everybody. So he intentionally did not show Raiden in any of the pre-release materials.
Yeah. I feel like the Raiden's secret of MGS2, and if anybody's just learning this first time, I'm sorry. The Raiden's secret of MGS2 was kind of a gut punch because
people were angry.
I don't know why Kojima thought Raiden would be cooler and more likable than Solid Snake.
I don't know.
But man, and then the series really, from then on, it's like, please like Raiden. Yeah. You guys, please like Raiden.
We worked so hard on him.
Finally, they're like, what if we cut him in half and make him a kick-ass cyborg? And people are like, we still don't like him. What if he has his own spin-off game as said kick-ass cyborg? We still don't like him, and we won't buy that game.
Yeah.
I did, but that's not the point. I bought it twice.
Yeah, I bought it used when it was dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. And because the game released first in North America, the secret was out by the time it released in other countries. Right. And in Europe, the European press really negatively reacted to Raiden. So they really hyped up Snake in all the advertisements in Europe. And in Japan, they loved Raiden. So they really hyped up Raiden in all the advertisements.
That's why they kept pushing Raiden.
Yeah.
The Japanese market loved him.
And so because it's Kojima and because they did so much work on the story ended up with a very political narrative, which kind of backfired him really, really late in production because 9/11 happened.
Yeah. Like
a month or so before the game was supposed to come out.
Yep.
And so they really quickly edited the end a lot. Fortunately, despite that, there wasn't any real controversy around the editing or the political nature of the game. So they apparently did what they needed to do there. And then after that, they decided they wanted to take a break from all of the super serious, super AAA gaming, and he made Boktai.
Boktai is, and there was a sequel to Boktai, and both of them are well regarded. Sequels. Were there 3? I know we only got one in America.
We got two.
We got two. We got two in America, and they're pretty well regarded.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. They're generally
these are the ones for
games.
people that don't remember. They had a sunlight sensor in them. I don't know if all of them did it, but you had to like be in the sun.
The 3 GBA games did. The DS game did not.
Yeah. And then Lunar Nights. He did Lunar Nights.
Yeah.
Lunar Nights was the first Kojima game that I remember buying because it said Kojima on it.
Well, it's the third sequel to Boktai.
Yeah, and I was like, it says Kojima, I'm going to buy it. And I bought it, and I was like, this isn't like Metal Gear.
No, it's exactly like Metal Gear. It's exactly like Metal Gear in that you bought it and were immediately confused by it.
Yeah, they got that right. It's a fun game, though. I recommend it.
Right. And apparently for like a decade before this, Kojima had kept pushing Konami to let him work with an American development team on anything at all. He just really wanted to work with a Western development team. And they finally did with the GameCube port of Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yes. Which is simultaneously well regarded and regarded poorly.
Yeah, it's a very controversial port.
Yeah, divisive.
I think it's good. It incorporates a lot of the upgrades that MGS2 had. It does have some differences, both story wise and acting wise. But all of that was approved by Kojima. Those were all the changes he wanted in the game.
I think a lot of people that have issues with it are people that are very used to the original voices, and then it can feel it's like hearing a new dub of a show you've seen a lot. It can be really jarring.
The weirdest part is it's the same actors. All of them.
I know, but they had them. They like gave different performances.
Yeah,
it makes me wonder if he didn't have much control over the original performances, and maybe so he was like, "No, I didn't like that. Do it this way."
Oh, he did not like the original translation.
Oh, okay, maybe that was it.
Yeah. The girl that does the saving, Mei Ling, I believe. It's the same voice actress, but in the original, she did a super offensive, stereotypical Asian accent.
Yeah.
And in the GameCube version, she gave her normal American accent.
Right.
And she is an Asian American woman, but she really ramped it up in the original PS1 version, and she doesn't in the GameCube version. And I've heard a lot of people say that they were upset that they brought in an American voice actress to play her. No, it's the same woman. It's the exact same woman.
She was probably relieved, like, I have to do that shit again, and they're like, no, you can do it not dumb.
Right.
She was like, oh, thank you.
But yeah, so they did MGS1. They also put out a slew of PSP Metal Gear games during that
I got to
era.
tell you, I love the PSP Metal Gear games.
Metal
Gear Acid is probably like my second favorite Metal Gear ever.
That's the card one, right?
Yes.
I have no interest at all in it.
Let me tell you, it's like someone was like, Justin, they mixed crack with super crack. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll buy that. One, please.
I'll take one super ultra crack.
Card games with weird military fetishistic stealth action with a top-down, like, strategy gameplay. Oh, man.
I'm in.
More, please.
And then, of course, MGS3 also came out and did incredibly well. And after that, Konami actually named the team Kojima Productions finally after, almost 20 years total that they had been working together.
I played a lot. I played through MGS3, but I played a ton of Subsistence Online. That was the first big game I really remember putting a lot of time in online.
I tried so hard to get into MGS3 many times now, and I've never been able to click with the story. I think part of it is when I played MGS 1 and 2, a lot of what appealed to me was this goofy, not quite futuristic, bad technology dystopia. And MGS 3 is like, no, we're going to the past. And I just didn't care.
Yeah, aesthetically, I don't love MGS3 for the similar reasons, but gameplay-wise, man, what a fun game.
Yeah.
Just... in some of the dumbest enemies. They're just great. One of them's just like literally an old man.
Yeah, and if you just save the game and turn it off and wait a week and come back, he's dead.
Yeah, he dies of old age in the game.
Yeah.
In real time. It's genius. Tell me about Kojima Productions.
Yeah, so then they made Kojima Productions, and they continued to release more PSP games, and of course MGS3 Subsistence was the first proper Metal Gear Solid game to have a Kojima Productions logo on it. And he wanted to step down from the series at that point. He thought he was done with Metal Gear. He was not going to do it anymore. And then the Metal Gear team received death threats if he did not make MGS4.
Jesus.
So he came back and he co-directed MGS4. And then he said he's going to step away again. He's done with the franchise. And then he was like, never mind. I really want to do a fifth game.
Yeah.
And then he finally got a chance to properly work with a Western developer because he just oversaw MGS on GameCube. He didn't get a chance to actually be with the team and make it work.
Right.
And his first game where he finally got to actually be part of the team and work with a Western developer was Castlevania Lords of Shadow.
I know you're critical of this game. I love Lords of Shadow.
Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you this. If it didn't say Castlevania, I'd be fine with it. Like, it's barely a castle. It's like a Castlevania themed. It's like if they made a Castlevania theme park. It wouldn't be like playing the game because they would just murder you when you walk in the door. but more so, it's just like, hey, what if we did God of War but themed it with Castlevania stuff,
Right.
which is basically Universal Monsters. It's
Yeah.
Universal Monsters presents God of War.
Starring Sir Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, for that, I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's a fine game. I liked it a lot when it came out.
I think it's just that I don't like that kind of game. I was never super big into
Right.
God of War either. So
Yeah.
it wasn't my thing.
I could see that.
Yeah. And then he did come back to Metal Gear. He came back and he did Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. He did Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
Not a word. Revengeance. Not a word. How do you... I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
it bugs me every time too.
I guess the other option is calling it Metal Gear Rising Vengeance again. But like,
Well, they were
vengeance
gonna.
already implies the re part. You're vengeful of an original act. Oh my god!
Well, the original title was Metal Gear Rising Vengeance, and then also Another Vengeance.
two vengeance.
And they were like, "That's just a run on. We got to shorten it. Just make
The
up
original,
words."
it was the numeral. It was 2 Metal Gear 2 Vengeance was what it was. And then they were like, we can't. How do we imply vengeance, but again?
Yeah.
Oh, revengeance. That's what you try to say.
Apparently, they were trying to mix vengeance and revenge.
Oh, I never once read it that way. Also, still not a word.
Still stupid. Because those two things basically mean the same thing. You don't need to combine them.
Synonymous.
Yeah, so after all that,
And Peace Walker. I want to say that Peace Walker is great. I love
Yeah.
Peace Walker.
I still
played
never
the crap
bothered
out
to
of
play
that.
it.
Oh man, it's fun. If you do, let me know, because I think it's one of the ones that you really need to play with other people.
Oh.
And nobody else I know owned a PSP. So
Yeah. After that, he was promoted to executive vice president and corporate officer at Konami. He was finally being actually recognized. He was given his own production team, and then he was promoted to executive VP. So in a pretty short period of time, Konami was like, we like this guy. We
Right.
need to focus more on him. He is making our shit work.
hey, where'd all this money come from? I
Right.
think it was that guy.
Yeah.
Great, release Bonk on the Wii U. They don't even make Wii U's anymore.
Do it. Just do it. And then also in that same year was when he teamed up with Suda 51 on Stature.
Not a word. Kojima, buddy.
It's the sequel to Snatcher that was a radio drama where it's just the word Snatcher, but they replaced the N with a D to make it Stature.
Lost Wilds.
So what we've learned is he hates English.
Or he just gets Jean-Claude Van Damme to pronounce everything for him.
It's a throwback to the last episode. And it was around this time that they had started work on the Fox engine, which was their new game engine specifically for use in the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 5, which was supposed to make it easily portable between PS3, 360, and PC, but they took way too long, so they also had to make it easily portable to the PS4 and Xbox One.
Yep.
And despite not at all being a horror fan, Kojima expressed interest in producing a new entry in the Silent Hill franchise while doing an interview. And he was like, well, I think we could do that in the Fox engine. And after he made that statement, someone from Konami came up to him and was like, would you? And so they started working on that.
There you go.
And then because MGS5 kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed, someone on the team was like, well, what if we just broke the game up and released part of it as a separate independent game?
Ground Zeroes.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically what they said was they're like, hey, you remember when we released Zone of Vendors and everyone just bought it to play the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo? And they go, yeah. And then someone else went, what if we just sold them the demo for like $30?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then someone else went, idiots will buy that. And we both did.
I didn't. No, I didn't
You
buy it.
did not?
I didn't buy it till
Okay.
it was on clearance. No.
I guess I bought it day one. I was like, hell yeah, $30. Here you go. Thank you. And I'll tell you what, I enjoyed the shit out of it. It was fun.
Yeah, I didn't have a PS4 yet, and I do think that Ground Zero is released on PS3 and 360, but I just assumed that it was designed for the new console, so I was like, well, I'll eventually get it when I get a new system.
Yeah.
And then PT came out, and so I rushed out and bought a PlayStation 4.
As you do.
Because
How is PT now that it's fully released set?
Please don't.
Does your purchase feel justify?
I can't, Justin. It's the wounds are still fresh.
I tell you what, if you ever get your hands on those execs at Konami, you're gonna exact some revengeance on them.
Yes, that is correct. That is.
They'll wish they were in another world.
Yes, that is the correct textbook definition of the word revengeance right there. Is how I feel towards Konami about Silent Hills. So just real brief. I'm just going to try to run through what happened here. So PT released, and Sony acted like it was a indie game that was free to play on PSN for PS4. And people downloaded it and they played it. And if you finally get to the end, which is difficult because Kojima, you have to do some weird shit to get to the end of that game. It feels like it's an endless hallway that just never ends. But if you happen to scream into a microphone at one point, it will end the demo and bring you to a trailer for Silent Hills, which was the Silent Hill game that Kojima was working on.
Yeah.
And shortly after that came out, the rumors started about Kojima having conflicts with higher-ups at Konami. And people started saying that he was going to be leaving Konami. And these rumors started in March of 2015. And of course, Konami and Kojima both came out and were like, no. I'm working on Metal Gear. Don't worry about it. This is totally normal. Everything is normal and don't listen to anyone.
Right.
And in July, Akio Otsuka, I think that's how you say that, he was someone from Kojima's team, had stated online that Konami had shut down Kojima Productions. And that's when people started noticing that the Kojima Productions logo was being removed from the Metal Gear website before the game's release. And then the game did release in October, and several publications started saying that Kojima was gone. He had left the company. Konami insisted he was on vacation. He's just on vacation.
Perpetual vacation forever, after which we will not pay him or affiliate with him again.
Yeah. And then when Metal Gear Solid 5 won Best Action Game and Kojima was specifically recognized, he wasn't at the Game Awards to receive the award. And Jeff Keighley actually said on the air, Mr. Kojima is not allowed to be here.
Yeah.
And so he instead gave it to somebody from Konami America who looked very awkward.
Yeah.
And then hope. Yeah. And then in December of 2015, Kojima officially announced a new independent Kojima Productions that was not a part of Konami, and everything finally revealed, no, he is no longer with Konami. He is gone.
Yeah.
And that was when Konami finally said, oh, yeah, we did cancel Silent Hills. But we'll keep working on Silent Hill franchise. Don't you worry about it. I'm really
banking on this bonk virtual console port. I think it's really going to bring us back around. We don't need him.
Hey guys,
put it on the Wii U.
We got blazing lasers on Wii U, though.
Of course I know what year it is.
Yeah. No, it was still a couple of years away from bonk on Wii U, man. This is years before that. What pissed me off so bad was they came out and they were like, but don't worry, we're going to continue to support the Silent Hill franchise.
Yeah.
It's been 5 years and they've announced nothing.
Well, that's pretty good support for Konami.
Yeah, I'm so angry.
Yeah.
So, Kojima Productions did go on to announce and then produce Death Stranding, which was very well received, despite the fact that a lot of people also said it was very weird.
Yeah, which at this point, I don't know anyone that's buying a Kojima game being like, I hope this is just normal fun time.
Well, having only ever played Penguin Adventure, I am very alarmed by these new games.
I was excited for Lost Wilds, and then I didn't pay attention for a while, and what the fuck is happening? Who's Norman Reedus?
I bought Penguin Adventure, and I bought Boktai, and I don't know what's going on now.
As far as legacy and impact, several early developers' names were known and printed on products. Kojima's wasn't for a long time,
right?
But he was
probably the first one who was known as that guy.
Yeah, known as an auteur rather than just a producer like Sid Meier or David Crane or whoever else.
Right.
And Newsweek named Kojima as one of the top 10 people of 2002. Next Gen, IGN, and other publications listed him as one of the greatest developers of all time.
Yeah.
Several of plot elements in MGS franchise that were seen as ridiculous or impossible at the time have since been seen as prophetic in terms of recent worldwide political shifts and events. And many game developers cite the Metal Gear franchise as the catalyst of the stealth game genre.
Yeah.
And Metal Gear Solid is frequently cited as an important moment in the evolution of storytelling in gaming.
Oh, yeah.
So Kojima is very much a celebrated individual, and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, we make our silly jokes about how off the wall he is and crazy, but in this is segueing into final thoughts. He always makes an interesting game.
Yeah.
It may not always be the best game, but it is always interesting.
Yeah. And almost always praised.
Yeah. I have issues with Kojima in like a lot of his depictions of women and stuff.
Yeah.
But his work will forever be on my radar because at the end of the day, I know it's not just going to be the newest, like Assassin's Creed 74.
Right.
This time it's in Antarctica. It's going to be
with
legit
penguins.
interesting. It's a sequel to Lost Worlds. So, he's always going to put out something interesting.
Yes.
I think, and even if it's not the best game ever, it's always going to make you think, or at the very least make you want to talk about it. Everything I've played of his, I've been like, yeah, I want to talk about that. Someone needs to be aware of the shit that is happening here.
Yeah. It's it's been since MGS1 at least. I've always at least kept an eye on what he's doing.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever been let down in the that was weird and different category.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, do I have complaints with some of his games?
Yeah.
Yes. Honestly, rarely, because it turns out when your shit is weird enough, people will accept all kinds of other stuff. Like, let's be honest, relatively obtuse inventory systems.
As much as I respect him as a director and designer and producer and all that, I haven't played through any of his games since MGS2. Like, I have started several of them since then, but not finished any one of them.
I'm the opposite end. A lot of his games since MGS2 I've played through MGS2 on Vita. Like, that's how late I played it. But I played MGS3, I played Acid, I played as much Peace Walker as I could. I couldn't beat it for some reason. I played a little bit of Boktai. I played Lunar Nights. I keep almost buying Death Stranding is one of those ones that was so weird that I was like, I don't know that it's $60 of weird.
Right.
But when it goes on sale for like $20 or less, I'm for sure on board. I was playing Metal Gear Rising Revengeance last year, with my dictionary being like, this doesn't make any sense.
I keep buying them. I have bought almost all of his games since then, except for the PSP games. I just haven't. They've all been on my shelf of these are games I will get to eventually. But every time I start one, I'm like, this is too fucking weird. I'm not in the mindset for this today.
Yeah.
So,
but what you should be in the mindset for is supporting our show on Patreon over at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can get all sorts of cool spin-off stuff that I'm not going to enumerate for the millionth time, but we would very much appreciate your support either there or on your podcast aggregator of choice where you can rate and review the show, and it helps tremendously.
But Justin, are there spin-off shows?
There are spin-off shows. You may have heard of them. They exist. And this particular episode was brought to you by the following patrons. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air and never thought I could feel so free. That's the theme of The Greatest American Hero. And someone made it their Patreon name.
Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
So someone wanted us to sing on
That was
the
very
show.
nice of them. I'm glad they brought that out of us. That was worth it.
It's a good end to the Kojima episode.
Moving on. Chris
Forbes.
Elk Newt F's thinks Saturn is a genuinely good guy. Aw, thank you.
Hi, Ross.
Merv Griffin's hentai mahjong.
quarter ass wax group.
Got the winners today. Spokes.
The Techno Funk Boy.
And Zavin Torian.
Are all the wonderful patrons who made this episode possible. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.
Surely it can't be this weird next time, right?
I don't know. We'll see.